a distinction bestowed only to 27 of 4,700 full-time USC faculty members. He also is one of 14 provost professors and an elite cadre of interdisciplinary scholars who hold joint appointments in 2 or more academic schools at the university. He is on the faculties of the USC Rossier School of Education, USC Marshall School of Business, and USC Price School of Public Policy. Dr. Harper has published 13 books and is author of more than 100 peer-reviewed articles and other academic publications. He is a recipient of dozens of top awards in his fields and 4 honorary degrees. Prior to joining the USC faculty in 2017, he spent a decade at the University of Pennsylvania, where he was a tenured full professor. The center he founded at Penn in 2011 is now the globally famous USC Race and Equity Center. A prolific researcher and speaker on a range of equity, diversity, inclusion, justice, and belonging topics, Dr. Harper has delivered hundreds of keynote addresses around the world. Dr. Harper prioritizes people, systems, structures, policies, accountability, and sustainability. He has testified twice to the U.S. House of Representatives, spoken at numerous White House and federal agency convenings, and been appointed by 2 U.S. presidents and a California governor to significant leadership awards and roles. Perhaps one of the most consequential contributions Dr. Harper has made was serving as the elected president of the American Educational Research Association, AERA, during the 2020 to 2021 term at the height of racial discourse in the United States after the murder of Mr. George Floyd and the global pandemic. As our educational system grappled to address challenges related to necessary change to virtual modalities while addressing continued systemic racial injustice, Dr. Harper's courageous leadership provided guidance to thousands of teachers and learners at the time. And there are amazing moments in our lives when some of us think, man, I wish I could share this moment with so-and-so, but they are gone. Well, this is such a moment for me. Dr. Harper's work has influenced me over so many years, and I wish my late mother could have seen me introduce one of my DEI heroes to you. It is my distinct honor to introduce to you Dr. Shaun Harper, whose work has impacted our lives in more ways than we will ever know. Dr. Harper.
Wow, thank you. Good morning. Happy homecoming week to you. This is such a privilege for me. It is such a deep honor, as a matter of fact, to stand here on this stage at this important moment in the history of this historic college. As my dear friend and brother, Dr. Rice, said, I've been here lots of times. I've spoken here on numerous occasions. My youngest brother is, in fact, a graduate of Morehouse College. I've done research here with many of your students who are now alums. But this is my first Crown Forum. So I don't take lightly the responsibility before me to hopefully inspire you, right? I think this is a great opportunity and platform to do that. Let me be really transparent about what it is that I'm hoping for here today. I am here to urge you to pick a fight. I am not going to tell you which fight to pick. I'm going to leave that to you to determine what it is that you care about and where there is an opportunity for you in the world to make a significant impact with your intellect, with your voice, with your Blackness, with your maleness, and with all of the benefits that a Morehouse College degree will ultimately afford you. So goal transparency here is to inspire you, as many of you as possible, to consider high impact academic careers in pursuit of solutions to problems that you care about, ultimately affecting millions of lives. Listen, I understand and appreciate that some of you will go into the world and become prolific engineers. Some of you will go into the world and become business executives. Some of you will go into government and politics. There perhaps even is a future president of the United States in this auditorium. But I also want many of you to go into academic careers like Professor Rice and me. And I want to help you see what is possible when you pick a fight that you care about and you bring your all to it. Listen, I care about lots of things. Diversity, equity, and inclusion is one of those things that I care very deeply about. I take my talents around the world, across industries. These are just some of the recent companies, agencies, firms, professional sports teams, and leagues, and so on that I've had the privilege of working with over the past 3 years. I care about gender equity. I care about the advancement of women in the workplace. I care about the eradication of workplace homophobia, transphobia, racism, Islamophobia, and all the things. So my platform affords me the opportunity to show up in these places as a subject matter expert with answers and solutions to leave each place better than I found it before. You too can have that kind of impact if you so choose. Part of the way that I get to do that work is not just by showing up in companies and sports teams and on campuses, but also through what I call public teaching. I am a professor at a private university, but I very much consider myself the public's educator as it pertains to diversity, equity, and inclusion. I care so much about it that I bring my voice to it in a range of venues. One of those venues was a 9-part series for executives across thousands of companies during the year that I spent as editor-at-large of Time magazine. I've also written 93 articles over the past 2 years for Forbes, almost all of them about diversity, equity, and inclusion. Those 93 articles have been read by more than 1.3 million people in America and around the world. It is my way of communicating what I know and what I care so deeply about, not just to other academicians, not just to the brilliant students in my classrooms at USC, but to the public, right? As I attempt to have the public do better by Black people, other people of color, women, poor people, queer people, and so on. You too can earn a platform that enables you to reach the hearts, minds, and behaviors of millions of people. An academic career can afford you that opportunity. On March 7th, there was a congressional hearing on diversity, equity, and inclusion in higher education. Conservative lawmakers on Capitol Hill gathered to spread lots of misinformation and disinformation about DEI on college campuses. To be clear, that misinformation and disinformation isn't just about what's happening at Georgia Tech and at UGA, but it also has some implications for what happens at a place like Morehouse. All sorts of ridiculous, outrageous lies, myths, and misinformation were communicated very dangerously right? You see, when that kind of rhetoric and misinformation makes its way to Capitol Hill, then it makes its way into policy. Then it makes its way into the determination of how financial resources are withheld from institutions like Morehouse that have always embraced its responsibility to offer access to brilliant Black men who may or may not have had other post-secondary options. I know all y'all had many, many, many options, but this is my way of acknowledging, right, Morehouse's historic commitment to providing access to Black men. As I watched that congressional hearing, I became increasingly frustrated by the misinformation. So I leveraged not only my own intellect, but also my platform and brought together a dozen scholars. Within a week, we produced this report, Truths About DEI on College Campuses. We printed and mailed 10,000 copies of the report, including one to every member of Congress and to every governor. We also, since that time, the report has been downloaded from our center's website more than 1.5 million times. Imagine you sitting someplace hearing something that frustrates you, something that you care about, that you know is wrong, and having the platform and the network to right that wrong. That is the privilege that an academic career and platform can afford you. I'm also, as part of the fight against the politicized attacks on DEI, Harvard Education Press published my newest book last month, The Big Lie About Race in America's Schools. You know, you can, in fact, publish books that pique your intellectual interest and that pique the interest of other people, other colleagues of yours within your academic field. But you also can publish books that give some guidance on what to do to counter a vexing, very dangerous problem that you care about. You can leverage every sentence, every line, every page of a book to help advance your mission, to help alleviate suffering and the withholding of resources and the withholding of justice from the people. That was my and my collaborators' goal in the publication of this book, The Big Lie. I care very deeply about historically Black colleges and universities. David and I told you that my youngest brother, Hayward, is a Morehouse College graduate. What we did not tell you is that I too am an HBCU graduate. I went to Albany State in Albany, Georgia, just a couple hours away from here, a very, very proud Albany State University graduate. I care a lot about HBCUs. Professor Rice and the president of Spelman College are 2 of 20 commissioners, 2 of 22 commissioners, rather, 2 of 22 commissioners that I brought together to reach consensus on funding needs and opportunities for HBCUs. One thing that I care very deeply about is the ways in which HBCUs have been systemically disadvantaged over their lifespan by funding inequities. Separate one, never equal, right? Many HBCUs were born out of plessy. They were born out of the promise of separate schooling for newly emancipated, formerly enslaved Africans in America. But even today in 2024, as I travel the country from one HBCU to the other, I can see materially the evidence of the financial disproportionality in funding, right? Because of the work that I do in corporations, many corporate executives say to me, "We love Black people." Do y'all know? We love HBCUs. All of them. And they often ask me, how can we better support HBCUs? The Spelman College president, Morehouse Professor David Wall Rice, and 20 other people who really care about HBCUs have come together to reach consensus on funding opportunities for the federal government, for state legislators, for individual wealthy people, and for corporate philanthropists. We will be releasing a report out of the center on November 12th that lays out an agenda that I believe will lead to billions of dollars in new investments and funding for HBCUs. It's not enough to just simply care about a thing and know that something's wrong, but leverage your voice and your network and your platform to do something about it. Literally billions of dollars can emerge from the work that these 22 leaders from HBCU campuses around the country and I have done together. Look, these are just a handful of things that I care about, just a handful of examples, but I really want to get to the thing that I care about most, and that thing is us. Dr. Rice mentioned that I have a birthday on Saturday. I'm turning 49. I have been a Black man all 49 of those years. I care a whole lot about us. So over the next several minutes, I'm going to give you several examples of how that care has been demonstrated and how I've been able to and afforded the privilege of leveraging my platform on behalf of us, on behalf of you and Black male collegians everywhere, not only across the United States, but across and throughout the diaspora. I released this report in 2012, Black Male Student Success in Higher Education. And it was a report that emerged from my National Black Male College Achievement Study. As a researcher, that study took me to 42 colleges and universities in 20 different states around the country. I was looking for you. I believe and I knew that you existed, despite a narrative that had been constructed about you, a one-sided narrative that would erroneously lead many Americans and others around the globe to believe that you don't exist. I went to these places seeking out success. Black undergraduate men who were thriving academically, Black undergraduate men who were standout student leaders on their campuses, Black undergraduate men who were working in Professor Rice's lab, Black undergraduate men who took advantage of the opportunity to study abroad, so on and so forth. I knew you existed. Of these 42 campuses, I was perhaps less dazzled by the Ivies. I mean, I suppose we would expect that, Black men at Princeton and Harvard and so on, would be there, they'd be thriving. But of the 42, I must acknowledge here that two of the 42 schools were my favorites. I mean, obviously, of course, my own beloved alma mater, Albany State, but also Morehouse College. I came here and I interviewed a dozen Morehouse men. One of them was now Dr. Ruben Alexander, who was your valedictorian in 2007. Ruben was one of the dozen men that I interviewed here. He's now a physician. He came to the University of Pennsylvania when I was a professor there for med school. And, he's one of those guys who taught me much about Black male success and how Black men succeed. I took what he and those 11 other Morehouse men and the 208 other men that I met along this journey, and I've used it to educate the nation on ways to create the conditions that allow more Black men to thrive. Emerging from that work was a framework, an anti-deficit achievement framework. Listen, I'm a professor. We're not in class right now, so I'm not going to hit you with a framework and, go down the rabbit hole of fully unpacking it. What I will tell you, though, is that this framework takes lots of questions about Black male failure, and it flips those questions inside out in pursuit of insights into Black male success. One example, What developmental gains do Black male achievers attribute to studying abroad? You see, on many campuses, the narrative is that, well, brothers don't study abroad. There are too many Black undergraduate men who have no interest in studying abroad. Well, what about those who do? What was it that compelled them to study abroad? What was it that they learned and gained from their international and global experiences that perhaps can be used to communicate and articulate to other Black undergraduate men the benefits of studying abroad and taking advantage of other what we call enriching educational experiences? That's just one of several dozen narratives that I took on in this project to tell a full, more complete, more multidimensional truth about you. Question: how many of you had a not so good start here at Morehouse in your freshman year? Dang, but a lot of people had a really good start here. This is great. This is how it's supposed to be. But some of you didn't, right? I appreciate your honesty and transparency. Part of what I think of as my responsibility as an academician is not only to study you and your college experiences and your college pathways, but to help educators and administrators understand, for those who got off to, in this case, a rocky, turbulent start in their freshman year, how did they turn that thing around? What was it beyond just individual sort of motivation and effort? Those are important. Professor Rice is a psychologist. I don't want to get into a psychological, sociological beef with him, but yeah, sure, individual motivation, so on and so forth. But what also were the institutional factors, the institutional policies? What was it about the posture of the administrators and the staff and the faculty who work here that enabled Black men to get off to a really good, productive, successful start, or help those who got off to a rocky start turn it around? When I write papers, I'm not just writing them for citations. I'm not just writing them to impress my peers. I'm writing them for you. I'm writing them to help administrators and others on college campuses do right and do better by you. In a Harvard Education Review article, I also helped explain resistance, how Black men who were experiencing racial stereotypes and racism on their campuses were able to resist those racist tropes and stereotypes, right? How they were able to succeed academically and otherwise, despite the racial microaggressions and other acts of racism with which they were confronted on their campuses. If you really made me choose just one, it would be this one. Niggers No More is the realest thing I've ever wrote. It is a declaration of self-determination that emerged from my National Black Male College Achievement Study. It was a declaration that we are not going to be the worst characterization of us that you have determined for us. We have some self-determination that we're not going to be niggered, right? Listen, these are just some ways that I imagine you, future academicians that are in the room, can use your voice and your brilliance to represent Black men differently, to tell a new narrative about Black men, right? It doesn't have to be in education. It doesn't have to be in the social sciences. It could be in a range of other fields. It doesn't have to be about Black men. It could be about Black women. It could be about poor people. It could be about people who are from rural communities or whatever. But just imagine you picking a problem and taking on the fight for the remainder of your lives and academic careers, right? To ensure that justice is delivered to those people. I took the lessons that I learned from my National Black Male College Achievement Study, from those 219 brilliant Black undergraduate men, and I took that with me into the streets of New York City, where my research team and I traveled to 40 low-income, traditional public high schools all throughout New York City. We were looking for Black and Latino young men who were succeeding. We knew they existed. Despite all of the things that you see in movies and on televisions that are situated within urban high schools, where there's just like such apathy and carelessness and recklessness among young men of color. Nah, we knew that, sure, that might be some of them, but that ain't all of them. We went seeking out success. We released this report it's a report of our findings from the New York City Black and Latino Male High School Achievement Study. We released it at an event at the Schomburg Center for Black Research and Culture in Harlem. More than 400 people came from the mayor's office, from the school district. The superintendent was there. Parents and family members were there. Teachers and educators were there. Most importantly, young Black men were there in the audience. The then U.S. Secretary of Education, Arne Duncan. Arne Duncan was Barack Obama's first Secretary of Education. Arne Duncan declared this one of the most important studies. He said that it had not only implications and possibilities for Black and Latino male success in New York City, but for the rest of the country. You want a U.S. Secretary of Housing and Urban Development. You want a U.S. Secretary of Transportation. You want a U.S. Secretary of Education to someday declare that something that you did was real good, and that it has the potential to impact and improve millions of people's lives. Listen, I grew up very, very poor in a single parent home 4 hours south of here. I did not imagine that I could have these kinds of platforms and opportunities when I was sitting in an audience at Albany State as an undergraduate student. But I am here to tell you that every example that I am presenting to you is not limited to me. You too can have extraordinary impact and influence that is double, triple, quadruple the impact that I am describing here. But you gotta pick a fight. You gotta pick a thing that you care about and bring your whole full self to it, your whole full mind, your whole full spirit to it, and stick with it and understand the multiple ways that you come at a thing. One of those ways for me has been to expand my academic family. In some ways, I'm doing that right here, right now, as I'm attempting to inspire you to imagine the impact that you could have as professors, as academicians, and so on. This was my team for the New York City Black and Latino Male High School Achievement Study. It was a 13-person team. Each of us was either Black or Latino. Each of us at the time were at the University of Pennsylvania. One guy was my postdoc. He's now a professor, a tenured professor at Vanderbilt. And all of the other were my graduate students at Penn. These were all Black and Latino men at an Ivy League university. If we were there, having succeeded educationally, we all knew that there were millions more across the country, just like us, right? So we went to New York City to do that study in that same spirit, with that same understanding that we were in some ways looking for ourselves. I encourage you to look for yourself, not just, like deeply introspective work. That's important too. But as you do your work to deliver justice to the people from whatever sphere of influence is afforded to you, I want you to look for yourselves, recognizing that you are not the only one who is smart, who's talented, who deserves a chance, so on and so forth. Those were the values with which we did this work. Yes, I appreciate having had the opportunity to do this project with my own research team comprised of men of color. Yes, I do very much appreciate that over my faculty career, I've had the privilege of serving on more than 130 doctoral dissertation committees. I've chaired about 45 of those. The overwhelming majority of those have been Black men. So making Black male doctors is a thing for me. But what's most perhaps exciting for me has been the opportunity to create what I called a grad prep academy. I thought that this woman who wrote about it in Diverse Issues in Higher Education captured it so brilliantly. She referred to it as a fraternal network of Black male education researchers. When I got to the University of Pennsylvania in 2007 as a faculty member, there was one Black male PhD student in the entire graduate school of education. One. That was unacceptably low to me. So, I didn't just fight my colleagues and tell them we need more Black men. No, I took it upon myself to create a pipeline, to create a network that would not only expand the representation of Black men in the PhD programs at Penn, but in other top schools of education across the country. Let me introduce you to the almost Dr. Jalil Howard. It's what I'm calling here Dr. Jalil Howard loading. Jalil just wrote the final 3 pages of his PhD dissertation 2 days ago. He is a 2017 Morehouse College graduate. Jalil was in our 4th cohort of Grad Prep Academy Scholars. A real point of pride for me is that we have 5 cohorts of Grad Prep Academy Scholars. Every one of them had a Morehouse man in it. All 5. The first one, Chauncey Smith, who is a psychology PhD now, got his PhD in psychology from University of Michigan. He was a psychology undergraduate student here at Morehouse. He was a protege of Dr. Bryant Marks, went on to become a tenure track faculty member at University of Virginia after getting his PhD, is now doing technology work. So exciting, right? So through this Grad Prep Academy, we identified Black undergraduate men in their junior year, had them apply nationally. We bring them to Penn. And then eventually, when I moved to USC in 2017, I took it with me there. And we prepared these men to be competitive applicants to top PhD programs, first in education, but then we expanded it to the social sciences more broadly, sociology, psychology, and other social science fields, including education still. We also expanded it to include other men of color who were underrepresented in PhD programs and in faculty careers, Latino men, Asian American men, Native American men, and certainly still Black men. Over the years, more than 100 men of color have participated in our Grad Prep Academy. Those Grad Prep Academy scholars have gone on to earn PhDs from Harvard, Duke, Northwestern, University of Michigan, Michigan State, UCLA, University of Pennsylvania, and I could go on and on and on and on. Many of them are now professors. Some of them have already earned tenure. You too could become the next cadre of Black men who help to diversify academic fields. You could be the Black male professor that so many students deserve. You can be the Black male intellectual leader who is the most sought after subject matter expert because of what you know and the rigor and excellence with which you do your work. That's what these guys have been prepared to become. More than 100 of them. And again, as I said to you, every cohort has had a Morehouse man or more than one Morehouse man in it. I'm gonna try to wrap up here in a minute. One other opportunity that I want you to think about is how might you create a movement by bringing together others, not just you, not just your students, but also others who are also expert on a thing, who also care very deeply about the same problem that you have picked, who are as committed as you are to the fight that you've committed yourselves to. The Rise for Boys and Men of Color project afforded me that opportunity. I received $10 million in grants from a handful of foundations to bring together folks like Dr. David Walrice and other nationally renowned experts on boys and men of color to take stock of what is known, to make some determinations about what remained to be known, but most importantly, to make some determinations about what could be done collectively through this network. Imagine someone giving you $10 million to do a thing that's ultimately going to impact the lives of millions of Black people, or millions of poor people, or millions of queer people, or whatever it is that you care about. Imagine having the power and the opportunity to harness an academic career and network to do that. I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about my newest work, my newest platform and project. Takeoff is an initiative that we launched 2 years ago with $2.1 million in funding from ECMC Foundation. We named this initiative for Takeoff, the slain Migos rapper. Why did we do that? Because I love Migos. It's my project. I get to decide what we're gonna call it. Look, this project is all about helping institutions do better by college men of color. Starting with 15 community colleges in the first Takeoff. When I landed here in Atlanta at Hartsville yesterday, my program officer from ECMC Foundation called me to let me know that the foundation's board, in addition to the $2.1 million that they gave me 2 years ago, the foundation's board decided yesterday to give me $2.6 million additional dollars for a second Takeoff. Yo, fam, this is for you. It's for you. It's not for me. It's not for my ego. It's not for my resume. It's not for my LinkedIn. It's for you. Not only the Black men who are represented here in this beloved Story Chapel today, but for Black male collegians everywhere. Imagine yourselves being able to do something for Black men that has national and international impact. I am you. So I'm just here to tell you that if I can do this and have this, so too can you. This is just a picture from the first Takeoff. It was dope. We had a little convening and kicked it off. It was cool. All right, listen. Here's the last thing that I will say. I said some version of it earlier when I invited you to imagine a cabinet member in the White House the Secretary of Labor, Secretary of Health and Human Services, or whatever. Imagine that person saying your work is good and it's going to impact millions of people. That's cool. That's really cool. I'm telling you right now, though, it ain't nothing like having a president of the United States appoint you to something because of what you've done, because of what you know, because of the genius and the expertise that you bring to the table. I had the real honor of serving on the advisory council for President Barack Obama's signature Boys and Men of Color initiative when he was president of the United States, My Brother's Keeper. On the one hand, seriously, it was like really an honor. It was dope. On the other hand, though, I was the only academician on the advisory council, the only researcher, the only professor on the council. John Legend was on it, which was dope. He's still at Spelman today? No, David's not sure. He might be at Spelman right now. It was dope. It was really cool, right? The point that I'm making to you, though, is that if there's going to be just one expert on a thing, you can be that one expert. Sure, the mayor of Philadelphia, Michael Nutter, at the time, was an expert in his own right in many ways. John Legend is an expert in his domain in many ways. The other advisory council members were experts in their own domains. But what I'm saying to you was that I was the only researcher and academician. I want you to be the researchers and academicians that get invited to the table to help shape policymaking, to help shape federal investments. More recently, so this was like back in like 2012, 2015. More recently, U.S. President Joe Biden, your most recent commencement speaker. Thank y'all for not booing that man. Joe's a good man. He's a good American. I was like sitting on pins and needles hoping that he ain't go left, but let me stay focused. More recently, Joe Biden appointed me to the National Board of Education Sciences. That board makes a determination about how just about $1 billion of federal money gets spent. The priorities around where that money goes. Yo, you can be that person at that table or at tables like it because you have shown the world that you are expert on a thing. You have picked a fight and you've brought your whole mind, body, soul, spirit, and deep thinking to it. Look, as I'm going to end the way that I started by saying, I don't care which fights you pick. Mine have been gender equity. Mine have been ensuring equitable funding for HBCUs. Mine has been ensuring that diversity, equity, and inclusion are achieved and sustained in K-12 schools, colleges, universities, corporations, the military, professional sports teams, and leagues. Mine has been a fight for narrative change about Black men. Mine has been a fight for ensuring that colleges and universities do better by Black men. Mine has been a fight for myself as a 48, almost 49-year-old Black man, and more importantly, a fight for you as Black male collegians. Those have been my fights. Those don't have to be your fights. But I do want you to determine, what is it that angers you, infuriates you? What is it that you have said, enough? Enough with the underserving, the disadvantaging, the not seeing, the disrespecting, so on and so forth. Enough with the health disparities, with the wealth disparities, and all the things. Whatever it is that you care about, pick that fight and bring your whole self to it through a multitude of strategies. Hey, happy homecoming. And again, thank you for affording me this incredible privilege to stand on this stage. Thank you.
Another hand for Dr. Sean Harper, please. All right, well, we're going to close out as we always do at about this time. If we could stand up, join hands right over left in singing the college hymn. Yeah, I would love that. Thank you. I appreciate it.